What's up YouTube? I'm David Warren and welcome back to this week's video. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing. It is all about being a CRNA student and being a nurse practitioner because I am both. And today is November 5th. I am recording this video on November 5th, and on November 6th, tomorrow morning, I am running half marathon number 10. It has been a goal of mine for the longest time and I'm finally getting it done. And I want to show you this stuff called Liquid IV. I'm not being paid by these people. They sent me some free samples and I literally love it and I want to show it off to you. It's called Liquid IV. It is an electrolyte solution, excellent after working out, especially running. It's not something I would just go and drink, but after a workout, it is on point. So if you've never tried Liquid IV, go try it. It's excellent. All right, now on with the show. What I wish I had known part 2. Like I said, if you haven't seen this video, go check that out. It's part 1. This will probably make a lot more sense after watching that. What I wish I had known, man, that is, after I do these videos, I keep thinking of things I want to add, hence part 2. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is expenses. Expenses are huge and something I wish I had given a little more thought to, especially going out of state. And there's a lot I want to say about this. So if you've seen my background, you know I'm a nurse practitioner. I've traveled for several years now. I had enough money saved up to pay for tuition. I opted to invest that money and take out student loans for now because I think I can get a better return on my investment versus the interest rate on student loans. So I'm going that route for now. What do I mean by expenses? I think it's important for you to know expense-wise what you're going to expect to spend. And that's not just on tuition. Obviously, tuition is a given. Like, you have to know how much tuition is. And average CRNA programs are anywhere from like $80,000 to $200,000. My program is right at $100,000, like $110,000, I think, total for 3 years. That's average. That's like very standard across the board. Sure, there are cheaper schools. Sure, there are more expensive schools, but that's like a good, like, throw the dart at the board. That's a ballpark average of generally what CRNA school is going to cost. And so sure, you're going to know that going in, you're going to spend $100,000. But what I want to talk to you about, and what I want to tell you about things that I didn't know is this. Expect to spend more, and there are expenses that add up very quickly. And I'll give you some examples just from my experience this year in CRNA school. Know how much housing is going to cost wherever you end up. So for me, I'm from Texas. I packed up and moved to California for CRNA school. Obviously, California is like literally the most expensive state, and maybe not quite the most expensive, but it is, in my opinion, the most expensive state. So knowing like what rent's going to cost, what your utilities are going to cost, what's the maintenance on your car going to cost? Are you going to have to put new tires on your car this year? How often are you going to have to get your oil changed? How much are groceries? How much do you plan to eat out? How much is a gym membership? Like all of these things that I don't think some people think about that you really, really, really should give consideration to. Now, this might be less of a concern if you are, say, in like the area where you grew up or the area where you're staying, like you're from Texas and you're going to CRNA school like in your home area. It may not be as big of a concern because you know how much rent costs or how much your mortgage payment is. You know how much groceries are going to cost. You know like where to go out. You know things. But if you're moving to a different area like I did, these are things that I didn't consider. I didn't really consider how much are groceries going to cost on a monthly basis. How much am I going to be going out? Like, what am I going to be doing? How much is it going to cost to maintain my car? Things like that. And so I would just say, start a spreadsheet, start with your school tuition, and then think about the expenses, like the expenses you have day to day. Those expenses probably are not going to go away while you're in school. So your rent or your mortgage, if you're like buying a house somewhere, think about your grocery bill, think about how much it's going to cost if you go out for like drinks or for dinner or go out with your friends. Healthcare, insurance, there are just so many things. And like every time I like say something, I'm like, oh, what about this expense? What about that expense? There are so many expenses. And so obviously expenses are going to differ person to person. So just try to make a list or a spreadsheet is going to be the best way to keep track of that, of your expenses, and keep track of them that way. So you know like roughly how much money am I going to be spending in this particular area. That's not something that I did because money wasn't a huge issue. But looking back now that I'm not going to be working for roughly 3 years full time, like it's important to know like what your expenses are going to be. And it's something that I really wish I had taken some time to do. And I think it's especially important for people like myself who up and moved out of somewhere into another area, know that like microclimate in that area, know how much things cost. Because let me tell you, in Fresno, California, it's cheap for California, but it is wildly expensive compared to Dallas, Texas. And so it's not something that I was expecting it, but it's not something that I was like thinking of with a lot of thought before. And a great example of that is gas. So gas here is like $6 a gallon, which is insane. In Texas, it's like $2.84 to $3 a gallon. So literally double the price. It's something I thought about, but it's not something I gave great detail to. And I wish I had like given a little more thought to that to know roughly how much it's going to cost on top of tuition already. So think about those expenses. It will literally pay you off in the long run. And I would say even think about this before you ever apply to CRNA school. Like if you know you want to go somewhere, think about those expenses and how much it's going to cost to live there. It may be cheaper to go to like a different place. So keep that in mind. That I would say don't like get accepted as CRNA school and then do it. That may be you right now, and that's good. Like you should really do that. But the ideal situation would be to do this before you ever apply. I didn't do that, and I really wish I would have. I think it would be different for me. It would be nice to have gone in knowing that. It didn't really change anything, but it would be nice like to have that data, that information. And so I would encourage you to do that. It would have been a game changer for me. So something I wish I had known. All right, I've got these written down here so I don't miss anything. The next is, these are like kind of scattered way across the board. The second is know your cohort. And what I mean by that is know the people that are in your class, because you're going to be spending 3 years with these people. And so you need to know them. And obviously you don't really have any say into, whether somebody's accepted or not. But my point is like whenever you start CRNA school, get to know the people in your cohort, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people. And so don't get off on like bad feet with bad feet. Don't get off on the bad foot with people in general, especially in your CRNA cohort, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people over the course of 3 years. And especially in a front-loaded program. So I'm in a front-loaded program now. Obviously, the front-loaded program ours is 15 months. And so for the better part of a year, you're like day after day interacting with people from your cohort, like either on group chat, in study group, some way or another, you're like interacting with people. And after that, like, sure, we may be in different clinical rotations, but we're still going to be in communication because we're a cohort, we're a class, and we're going to be together, and we're doing our D&P projects. So all that to say, like, get off on the good foot with people in your cohort, because it's really going to pay off in the long run, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people. You really don't want to, like, I don't know, I don't really know how to say that. You really don't want to, like, get off on the wrong foot and, like, start bad and, like, not have good, solid relationships with the people that are in your class. And I know that seems so, like, common sense, and it's like, well, duh. But you would be surprised at how much drama goes on in CRNA classes. And of course, that becomes kind of like a family. And sure, families argue and families fight, but at the end of the day, you're like one, and you've got to get through it together. And so just knowing that people in your cohort are going to be there with you through thick, through thin, through everything. They are literally the ones who know what's going on in your life, and they can relate to it on a much deeper level than anybody else in your life can. And sure, there are other people in your life who have probably been through doctoral programs, but it's not like CRNA school. It's different. Sure, I'm not saying CRNA school is the hardest doctoral program, but it's just different. Each program is unique. It would be like if I were dating somebody who was going to another doctoral program, they would probably say the same thing. They're like, well, you've never been to such and such school. And I'll be like, yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. So you don't understand like what's going on in the person's life any more so than the cohort does, any more so than the people you're surrounding yourself with in your class. They know what's going on. They know the stressors. They're feeling all of the same things that you're feeling. And so commiserate with them, get to know them, go out with them on like a friend basis, get to know these people, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. Form study groups, but generally just become good friends with the people in your cohort, because you are going to be spending a lot of time with them. And it's important that you have that solid relationship. Because when things get challenging and when things get tough and you're collaborating with people to combine notes and to study together, it's good to have that good foundation. And so I would say, like, looking back now, don't be one of the loners who just goes off and does their own thing. Like, you really want to have a good solid foundation with your cohort, and you want to know them well, and you want to trust them and they want to trust you. Have that good solid relationship that you would have with like a coworker at work. Have that same type of relationship with your CRNA class members, because they're going to pull you through some of the deepest and darkest times of your life. Take it from me, it will happen. All right, the third point is know your faculty. And this is a little more challenging, but I would say do your best to know your faculty. And this really comes into play in the interview. And again, this kind of goes without saying, and it's also a little challenging because you can't, it's hard to get to know somebody in a 15 or a 30-minute period. But especially if you're doing an in-person interview, try to get to know your faculty. Get a really good sense of how the faculty is. And of course, everybody in an interview, faculty and students alike, we're all trying to put on like our best selves. We're trying to put our best foot forward. But really try to get to know your faculty and make sure that they are going to be a good match for you, because much like your cohort, you're going to be spending 3 years with your same faculty members. Most CRNA schools have a small group of faculty, and they are the only ones who teach in the program. Like my program has, I don't know, I'm going to roughly guess probably 6 to 8 faculty members total for the entire like CRNA program. And so you're going to get to know those people on a very deep level. And if you start out not liking and clashing with one of your faculty members, it's probably just going to get worse because you've got 3 more years ahead of you. So try to figure out, like, is this going to be a good match for me? Because the faculty members are doing the same thing to you. They're trying to figure out, is this student somebody I want to deal with for 3 years? So do the same thing, like figure out, is this faculty member, is somebody I can deal with for 3 years? What's their teaching style? How are they outside the classroom? Like, are they reachable? Are they willing to answer questions? What is their personality like? Maybe our personalities clash and it's just not a good fit. And you should know that before you commit to that school, because I would not want to pay $100,000 to somewhere who I think the faculty doesn't have my back. And I would not want that. I wouldn't want that for you either. So just know going in, you're going to need to know, is the faculty, do their personalities mesh with yours? And again, that's hard to get in an interview, but do your best to try to understand and get a sense of, are the faculty members going to have my back for the duration of the program? Is it going to be a good fit? Because they're doing the same thing to you. They're trying to figure out, are you a good fit? And you need to be trying to figure out, are they a good fit for you? If they're not, consider somewhere else. If they are a good fit, then obviously it's a good place for you. So know your faculty. All right, last point is have a plan for where you're moving. And this kind of ties back into point 1 when I talked about the expenses. Have a plan. It was a little different for me, and a lot of this is like some of my personal experience, and I really want to share that because I think it's things that people could learn from. So if you know any of my backstory, I bought a house in 2020. I sold the house in November of 2021, and I moved to California in December of 2021. So I sold my house, put all of my stuff into storage, and then hit the road to California. In California, I decided to do an Airbnb for 3 months. So I had a shared Airbnb with a host for the first 3 months of my program. And then it was fine. It was cheap. It was like $300 a month, but it was with a shared host. I had my own private bathroom. I had my own private bedroom, but I was basically staying with a family for 3 months of my CRNA program. And so families don't really understand graduate school that well. Of course, they were just going about their normal routine. They were cooking and having people over and doing all the things that you would normally do if you're not in school, all the fun things, the things that I really, really miss. That's obviously another video, but they were just doing normal things. And I was staying here at this place, this Airbnb, 30 minutes away from the city of where my college is. And I was getting through, but looking back now, it would have made more sense for me to get an apartment and to just do that from the start. I tried to save money by getting an Airbnb. And while it worked, it wasn't ideal because that lasted roughly 3 to 4 months. And then I moved out in the middle of the CRNA quarter, middle of quarter 2 for CRNA school, moved into an apartment And that transition was rough because it was like trying to find a place to live, while I was in an Airbnb, trying to find an apartment while in CRNA school, trying to find time to move. Like it just wasn't the best setup. And looking back now, like it wasn't the best idea. So I would tell you this, have a plan for when you move. Like if you want to stay in an Airbnb, like do that for a year or do that for however long you're going to be there, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, like stay in that location. Don't be trying to switch things up. If you know you want to live by yourself, go get an apartment and live by yourself, but have a plan and think ahead of time. Don't be trying to move around multiple times in the quarter while you're in CRNA school. It can happen. Like I did it and it worked for me. Like I'm still passing, but it wasn't the most stress-free thing ever. It was slightly stressful, actually. It was a little terrifying. So just have a good plan together for whenever you get ready to go somewhere, especially if you're moving. Obviously, if you're like in your location, you're going to CRNA school around your hometown, not that big of a deal. Like, what's going to happen. But if you're having to, like I did, up and move out, like really give that some thought. Figure out where you're going to live, because prior to coming out here, I didn't have an idea of where I was going to live. Like I randomly was I randomly was looking at Airbnbs and randomly chose this one Airbnb to stay in before ever moving out here. It would be ideal to like come out, get a scope of the place, where's a good place to live, that kind of thing. So I would encourage you to do that. Like at least go check it out. Don't just book a random Airbnb like I did. That may be your only choice, but the ideal situation would be to go find out ahead of time. So have a good plan for when you're going to move out. I would not advise moving in the middle of CRNA school. It's not ideal. Find somewhere and stick with it. That would be my advice to you. What are your other recommendations? This is part 2. I'm interested in knowing what other recommendations are, because these are largely like personal things for me. Like that last point about me like moving in CRNA school and going to an Airbnb and then going to an apartment, like that may not be it. Like I'm the only one in my class who did that. Probably wasn't the best idea. So I'm sharing that experience with you. Obviously that may be very unique to me. That may not be a thing for like you watching. So if you have other suggestions, comment below. Let me know. I'd love to hear them. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video, hopefully after I survive my half marathon tomorrow.